I see Sean McVay in LA. In LA and in San Diego, I think my mind would start to wander. And then I'm just chilling on the beach and I'm thinking about existential things. I'm not really thinking about my job. As a matter of fact, if I spent time in San Diego or LA, I'd say, you know what? I don't want to work anymore. You know what? Why do I have this job? It's beautiful outside. Everybody's happy. What am I doing grinding day to day? And I think that is what Sean McVay is going through right now. But I remember one comic saying something to the effect of that his secret power was knowing his number, his own number. He said, look, I don't go into it, but he said, I know I'm a 6. I'm a 5 or a 6. And when I approach an 8 or a 9 in a bar, I go with that knowledge, okay? I go with the proper expectations. I know who I am, okay?
What was your number? What did you have yourself rated as when you walked into that bar? Before you were married, we know you're happily married, but before you were married, what was your number?
NA.
No, come
on. I will not be defined by numbers. You know, some of these schools, they have pass, fail, pass. Let's say it's a 5. Who we kidding? But let's say it's a 5. JA Adande, a bearded JA Adande is here. I haven't seen this.
It's new.
I like
this is new.
I like it.
It's something different.
Okay, I like it. Yeah, it's different. So you're here. JA Adande, one of the legends of media, one of the esteemed persons in academia, is here today. And Jay, I've known you for a long time. I've never asked you this question. I'm going to ask you a question off the top. Hope you're not thrown off by it. Take your time. Answer the question appropriately. What's the best game, the best sporting event you've ever covered, and where was it?
It's funny. The longer I go, the harder it is to answer that question. Game 6 of the 2013 NBA Finals, the Heat and the Spurs, the Ray Allen shot was pretty good. It comes to mind. I don't automatically put it at the best. That I covered the triple overtime NBA Finals game between the Suns and the Bulls in '93. Game 7 of the 2002 NBA Western Conference Finals with the Kings and the Lakers. In Boston, Michael, standing on the 17th green when Justin Leonard made the putt in the Ryder Cup. Believe it or not.
That was great.
One of the more dramatic and thrilling moments that stands out to me. So those are some of the ones that are in contention. I don't have a definitive. I get asked that question more and more, and it gets harder and harder for me to answer it.
Well, but you know what? You gave the right answer. Because I told Gary Carter, I said, don't tell Adande, I'm going to ask him this. I hope it doesn't backfire on me. And you delivered. You know, I was listening to what you said, and I remember all those games, but I had an agenda when I asked you that question. And what I didn't want you to say, I'll just be honest with you. I've known you for a long time. We can just be honest. One thing, I didn't want you to say some type of neutral site game. Because those aren't, you know why? Jay, those aren't memorable. Everything you mentioned, okay, even the Ryder Cup, that wasn't a neutral site. That was in the United States. It was U.S., Europe, Ryder Cup, great comeback from the U.S., the country club at Brookline. So even that.
So are you saying there have been no memorable Super Bowls? Because all the Super Bowls have been neutral site. Or are you saying that last year's Super Bowl, when the Rams played in L.A., was the best one ever? Or the year before, when the Buccaneers played in Tampa Bay? You saying those are the two best Super Bowls ever because they weren't technically neutral?
Well, I'd say those are memorable. Those are memorable. And Super Bowls are memorable. Super Bowls are in a different category. What I don't like is conference championship games. Unless you're going to, maybe we open up a different standard and a new precedent is set here, and we'll say, you know what, that was a lot better than we thought it would be. I don't like it though. I would like the atmosphere in Buffalo. If they had given it to Buffalo and all those number 3s in the stands and the snow in Buffalo and the breath coming out.
Stop right there with the snow being a necessary element. So two things. One, getting back to the neutral site.
I didn't say it's necessary. I say
getting back to the neutral site. All the Final Fours are at neutral sites. The semifinals and the championship games of the NCAA tournaments are at a neutral site. I have a problem with them being in a dome because it's not conducive for the best basketball. We tend to see terrible shooting performances at the Final Four because basketball is not meant to be played in a dome. But neutral site is not the problem. Football,
neither is anything.
I would argue playing football in a dome is preferable. Why? Because we shouldn't have the elements determine the outcome of the game. And we talk about this,
why not?
As you can see on the screen, because the NFL reportedly this week is going to decide on the neutral site if the Bills and the Chiefs meet in the conference championship game. We don't want our champions determined by the weather. This is not the Weather Channel.
Why not?
We don't care about the elements because it should be determined by which is the best team. Patrick, is a snowstorm. Do you think a snowstorm is conducive to seeing Patrick Mahomes at his best? If he's playing in the championship game, do you want to see him in a snowstorm or do you want to see him where he can do all of the things that we like to see Patrick Mahomes doing? I'm old enough and I'm a Southern Californian enough to remember when the Chargers had to play in Cincinnati in the 1981 AFC Championship game. It was like 50 below with the wind chill, colder than the Ice Bowl with the wind chill, and the poor Chargers never had a chance. Cincinnati, I was just reading up on this. Cincinnati actually elected to kick off both halves so that they would have the wind at their backs. That's how much the weather was a factor.
Hold on. What's this? Let's calm down here for a second. Let's calm down. What's this poor? Because I remember that. And I'm not trying to do this, hey, back in the day, we walked to the school backwards and, we did all these things and all these urban legends. But that day, just up the road in Northeast Ohio, because that was in Cincinnati, Northeast Ohio, it was cold there too. That day, went outside with my friends, we played football. Okay, just the way, hey, I don't know.
You didn't play a trip to the Super Bowl wasn't on the line. A trip to the Super Bowl was not on the line.
But
when the stakes are high, I don't want the weather determining the outcome. I want the best teams and the best coaching and the best strategy and the best performance determine the outcome, not the weather, not the wind or the snow.
Explain to me, sir, Professor, explain to me why the Chargers, is that what your students call you, Professor Adande? Is it Professor Adande or is it?
They've been known to call me that, yes.
Okay, don't have them call you Jay. Just, hey, call me Professor Adande. But you explain to me why the Chargers didn't have a chance and the Bengals did? Because that was an unusual circumstance. Not like it's always 59 below wind chill in Cincinnati. It's just the opposite. So why did the Chargers not have a chance and the Bengals did?
You think the Bengals might have been slightly more used to it? You think their bodies might have been a little bit more acclimated to the cold since that was their environment? So there's another notion that we need to dispel, and that's that would constitute football weather. Like I saw, guy Floria was saying, they should pick like Heinz Field or Soldier Field or Lambeau Field, even play this game. Dispel the notion that cold, snow, wind chill is football weather. Football, remember the origins of football. It was a college sport. It was a fall college sport. And they only played about 8 games or so. So it would start around the start of the school year in September or so, and they'd be done before Thanksgiving. And then they would go play a bowl game somewhere warm in like California or Florida or Texas. That was football. Yeah. Football was not meant to be played outdoors in January. I'm sorry. The people that started the game, that instituted the game, that made the game great, they did not intend it for it to be played outdoors in January. I'm sorry. That's a myth. And you got all excited because you've seen some old NFL footage of steam coming off people's heads and cold minus 15-degree temperatures at Lambeau Field. And you think that's some ideal that should determine the outcome of these championship games. And that's not the case at all. There's nothing to do with the history of football, the origins of football.
Fritz Pollard right now is leaning over the balcony of heaven, thinking about coming down and shaking you right now. By the way, the birthplace of pro football, where's the birthplace of pro football? It's not California, not Florida, not Arizona. Where is it? Where is it? You tell me. It's cold there. We just talked about it. It's Ohio. Oh, okay, so
not in January. They weren't playing games in January in Ohio.
Hey, they play games. They do what's necessary. I'm shocked that you are pro neutral site. So you think this is a great idea? This is I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you like it.
I will say this, not in general, but given the circumstances where they're trying to be fair because of these unusual circumstances. I believe that, yes, you should have home court advantage, home field advantage on the basis of your performance in the regular season until it gets to maybe the Super Bowl. And again, the whole reason the Super Bowl is played in neutral sites 99% of the time in warm weather sites is because people want to be warm. It's a celebration. It's a festival. And you also want your games to be decided by the teams and not by the weather. So my proposal is that they should play this game in Indianapolis, in the Dome, and Indianapolis is located about 500 miles from each city, from Buffalo and from Kansas City. It's almost exactly in the middle of those two cities. It's a nice neutral. And and furthermore, I say each team should be allowed to charter a couple jets and fly in some of their, longest standing season ticket holders and just give a reward for them. So you definitely should have some fans from both teams there and, fly in some of your best season ticket holders and reward them.
The league should do it. The league should do that. But because you're going down the right path here. Now, I like what you said there. I mean, I don't like the neutral site. I wish they could have gone by. I know it's unfortunate, nobody's fault, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I wish they could have just gone by the rules that they've already established. The rules that they've established that in these cases, you go by winning percentage, and go by winning percentage. Kansas City is your number one seed in the AFC and would have home field, although we know Cincinnati beat Kansas City. Cincinnati's better than Kansas City, by the way. Ooh, I said it. And Buffalo also beat Kansas City, but it's just the way it goes. It's just the way it goes. They won 14 games. Buffalo won 13. So winning percentage, go with Kansas City. But I like this. How about this? Another reason the conference championship game at a neutral site kind of turns me off a little bit is because of the little guy. The little guy. You think about all the people around the stadium who are able to get a little more income with the conference championship being in their city. The stadium workers are about to get a little bit more money. Restaurants, more money for restaurants, more money for hotels. Local economies get a little boost, get a little spike because they're the conference championship game hosts. So nobody gets it now. Now you're going to get it to Indianapolis, home of the Colts. I mean, what have they done to earn this? Indianapolis, and they get enough already anyway. They got enough Final Fours. They got the Indy 500. They got all kinds of stuff. They don't need an economic boost. And so that's the part of it. There's no way to correct it. So I guess.
All right. So speaking of the little guy or
bringing
the
in fans is a good thing.
How about this, Michael? In addition to some of your best fans, how about in keeping with the theme and keeping with what brought us to this necessity in the first place? How about reward some emergency medical personnel? Not just the people in Cincinnati, but people in the Indianapolis community, people in Kansas City.
They turned it down, by the way.
We're saying Indianapolis like they made the decision, but
they don't want it.
Local emergency medical personnel, local emergency medical personnel from the city, in addition to from both participating teams. How about we reward them? Like, remember they basically did that the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. Remember they had first responders and medical personnel in the mid of the pandemic. And so do something here for emergency medical personnel to show appreciation for all, not just the people that help resuscitate Damar Hamlin, but those who do it on a daily basis and don't get the acclaim. Give them a moment. Turn this into something positive and rewarding for people like that.
Well, I don't know where my manners have been. Look, I haven't seen you. Sometimes if you haven't seen somebody in a long time, you're really happy to see him, and you just pick a fight with him, but you're really just happy to see him. You just want to give him a hug. So I want to give you a virtual hug. JA Adande, haven't seen you, my brother from another in a long time. I'm so happy that you're here, and I'm so happy that you, family, you're watching, you're listening, watching on Peacock TV, listening on Sirius XM Channel 85, YouTube, however you consume podcasts. And Jay, the reason we're having this conversation, we're able to have this conversation, pro, cons of neutral sites, okay, we can go back and forth on that all day. But we both agree that the reason we're having this conversation, and there's a positive there, is that Damar Hamlin, miraculous. Damar Hamlin is at home. First he left Cincinnati, went back to Buffalo. Then he left the hospital in Buffalo and went home. He's home.
It's unbelievable that he's not hospitalized right now, that there's no tubes or, breathing apparatus or anything attached to him and it's barely been a week. We're just a couple of days past when all this first transpired. And this might be the most American aspect of it. It turns out he's already trademarked or filed for trademarks for some of the phrases, including "Did we win?", which is the instantly legendary response that he had upon first regaining consciousness and was able to communicate in the hospital room.
And I tell you what, we got, and you know what?
And apparently he's already planning motivational speaking tours and things like that. And that's as American as it gets. Get your money.
Jay, if they win the Super Bowl, I mean, the whole country's gonna be crying. The whole country is gonna be in tears. I mean, just think about all of the storylines and all the things that this city. First of all, before we get to Damar Hamlin, think about the things that Buffalo, just to come in, take football out of it, what Buffalo has been through in the past year and a half. Been through a lot. Natural disasters, just a ghastly shooting in Buffalo last year.
I couldn't believe that was within the last year. Like that shooting, it felt like so much has happened since then. I was like, wow, that took place in 2022 as well. But man, Buffalo has been through it.
And then Damar Hamlin, I mean, I just can't believe. I'm just so thankful and grateful for, as you said, the first responders, the medical professionals, the trainers, staff on the Bills, on the Bengals, hospital personnel, doctors, nurses, everybody in Cincinnati, everybody in the hospital in Buffalo, to be in this situation where we can talk about this young man just resuming his life. And I don't know about football. Nobody's mentioned football. And I almost don't want to think about that for him. I don't know what his future is, but it's just an amazing story that we're talking about Damar Hamlin after what we saw on that Monday night. We're talking about him going home and watching the playoffs this weekend, just like the rest of us. But I'm guessing we have a chance to have Damar Hamlin on the show. I'm guessing he'll say, I don't like neutral sites either. I don't know what Adande's talking about. Football was meant to be played in the cold. All right, Jay, listen, let's take a break. I want to talk some basketball with you. When we come back, the brother from another, Helin, Pro Basketball Talk, will join us. And we got a lot of hooping to talk about, a lot of scoring.
Going on in the association.
We were covering the NBA, Adande. You were covering the Bulls. I was covering the Cavaliers. They didn't score this easily. They didn't score.
It was a long time ago. It was the 90s when points were hard to come by. Thanks in part to your Cleveland Cavaliers and Mike Fratello mucking up the game.
Yeah, he had to muck it up. That was his only shot. He loved the 78, 77 game. But Pat started. It was Riley first. Riley did it before Fratello.
Equally guilty, my mind.
Where's Mitchell returning to Utah, and he greets a fan that he had greeted at the arena every game for 5 years. So we know Donovan Mitchell got traded from Utah to Cleveland. He sees his fan, and they share this embrace. That's great. I mean, I love this. And Mitchell came back last night, had a great game. Cleveland's a very good team, by the way. Had a great game, had 46 points. Not enough, though. Utah Jazz beat the Cavaliers. Helin, Pro Basketball Talk, joins us. JA Adande is here. And I just want to know what you guys, Kurt, I'll start with you. What do you think of that scene? What do you think about Donovan Mitchell returning to the scene where he played for 5 years?
You know what? That was actually really heartwarming. And Donovan's a good guy, like genuinely one of the good guys of the league. And so like he has these connections for all his understandable concerns and tensions he's had in Utah. Like he really did connect with the fans. He really did feel a part of that community. So it was good to see that, the love kind of flow both ways last night. And they went out and dropped 46 on him, like you said, because he's just tearing up everybody.
Trying to break their hearts. Yeah, and it's interesting, Kurt, because, he has spoken about some of the, the racial discrimination that he faced and people of color faced in Utah, but he also can single, I think it's a good reminder that when he says these things, when people say these things, it doesn't mean everybody, right? And he has plenty of people and plenty of positive interactions that I'm sure he can cite, but that doesn't mean that some of the negative stuff doesn't happen. Switching to the basketball element of this, Kurt. So I always say to win a championship, to really be considered a championship contender, you have to be in the top 6 in point differential, and you have to have one of the top 6 players in the league. In general, if you look at the champions, they fulfill both those categories. Cleveland is second in point differential, and Donovan might not be who you rank in the top 6 in terms of players. There's a lot of great players having great seasons this year, but I think he can get on a run where he can play like a top 6 guy in the playoffs. And do you think those two things could happen? Should we be taking him seriously as a championship contender because some of the indicators are there?
No, not yet. Look, I think they're a contender in a couple of years. Like if we're talking this year, and I think, by the way, you're right. He can get on Chauncey Billups when the Pistons won in 2004. Probably not a top 6 player in the league, played like a top 6 player or top 2 player in the league for a stretch, capable of it. I think that's spot on. I think Donovan's capable of playing at that level, but man, they're not quite there yet. A, I just don't think they've learned to win as a unit. They haven't been through it. B, somebody go get them a 3, man. No offense, Isaac Okoro, but you got to get some. If you're going to get by Boston with Tatum and Brown, and you're going to get by the Bucks with Middleton and everybody else, better go get yourself a wing defender, and they just don't have one right now.
All right, let me try to answer that question though. I'm not gonna say no as quickly as Kurt did, because I've seen them. I know it's the regular season.
Because you're from Ohio.
No, that's not. I've lived in Boston longer than I lived in Ohio. I did that math the other day. I was like, wait a minute. Wow. To work that out, you got to be of a certain age. Because I was in Ohio for, pretty much 22 years, 23 years. So to work that out, you got to be 50 or plus, 50 plus. Anyway, no, it's not because of Ohio. It's because I've seen the way they play Boston. So Kurt mentioned Boston. Already this year, they played twice. They've lost to them. The Celtics have lost to them twice. And it's that Cleveland does things to them that kind of throw them off a little bit. I think their size gives Boston some problems, although Rob Williams wasn't there. And, they don't have a 3, but they got a backcourt, a pretty explosive backcourt that's going to cause a lot of teams problems. If you look at it, Boston, Milwaukee, and then throw it up between Cleveland and Brooklyn. They got a real shot, Kurt. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised.
I love them, but I just, push comes to shove, I trust that Kevin Durant guy. I think he's going to be pretty good in the playoffs. I know what he's going to bring day in and day out if he's there.
How concerned are you by this latest knee injury?
Less concerned than the one last year, I think. This is it. Not to get into it, not to go medical, but it was an isolated knee sprain on just the MCL, which is much less of a problem than what he had last year. That kept him out 20-plus games. And, of course, that's when the whole season unraveled. So there is that sense with Brooklyn, right? It's all on Kyrie now. What? Yeah, exactly. It's all on Kyrie now. What could possibly go wrong? They are a little more fragile, but I think they've got better depth. He won't be out as long. And by the way, to their advantage, hitting a soft spot in the schedule. They've actually got a kind of soft spot coming up, so they could get a couple of wins under the belt and gain some confidence. But it does feel like every time. Doesn't it feel like every time you watch the Nets, you're like, yeah, when does the other shoe drop, man?
That's their story. Go ahead, Jay.
Oh, I wanted to shift out west. Well, first of all, didn't they just have the soft spot in their schedule? Isn't that how they started ramping up all these wins? Was they hit a nice soft spot? How many soft stretches can they have? Especially when there's a lot of good teams and players in this league. I want to shift west though. Coming off opening night, to rewind a little bit, I said I was concerned just by the fact that the Phoenix Suns got a shot at the Dallas Mavericks, who put them out last year, and they get their first shot in Dallas, pounced on them in the first half. Phoenix came back and won that game, but how could you go into that game without the mentality that you absolutely wanted to destroy Dallas? And they didn't have that. And I feel like that's resurfaced, that something's just kind of off with them. And it resurfaced in addition to the injuries. Up until last night when they beat the Warriors, they were on a 9-game losing streak. Things haven't seemed quite right in Phoenix. What, when you watch the Suns, seems off to you?
Look, we got to start with the obvious, right? Which is Devin Booker's out. And he's their best, not only the best player, but Father Time's starting to win the race with Chris Paul. As much as I've loved covering Chris Paul over the years, and he's still a great floor general, and his game ages slower because he's such a high IQ player, he's not the same guy. And after that, they've had other injuries. Cam Johnson is out. DeAndre Ayton, though, look, they gave him a max. Booker's out. You can't run an offense through him. You can't. He's a nice big man. He's a quality big man. But you can't treat him like he wants to be treated, like a Joel Embiid or somebody where you can just run the offense through him and get that kind of success. I just don't think they're that well constructed right now. It's kind of all hinges on Booker. And they've got some tweaking and remodeling to do. And by the way, maybe trade Jay Crowder for something that helps you today.
Get that off the checklist, right? It's been on the checklist since before the season.
Hey, you're talking about houses out west. You're talking about tweaking or remodeling. I thought you were talking about a house in San Francisco, the Chase Center, where the Golden State Warriors play. And Steph came back last night. He struggled in the beginning. Then he heated up after that. But they really didn't look great throughout against those Phoenix Suns. And so what do you expect from the Warriors? Got Steph back, but you look at them in the standings. We've already played half of the season, and they're 500. I mean, they're pretty much right around 500. So, Kurt, and then Jay, give me some insight on the Golden State Warriors.
How long are we waiting for them to flip the switch? Because, we've seen them do it, right? We're like, oh, man, we saw him last June.
2 more weeks.
It's exactly. We keep giving them, I trust him. There comes a point where Jordan Poole hasn't been quite the same guy. And Steph has been at it. He wasn't obviously last night, but he was like MVP level early on. Clay's played better, but this thing hasn't melded the same way. And you can see how much they miss Otto Porter, Gary Payton II, some of the depth that stepped up for them in the playoffs that they could
came back to haunt them last night.
And picked up his ring and then was a pain in there. Yeah. They missed that depth. They thought the young guys would step up and do it. Kuminga's slowly starting to come around, but Wiseman and Moody certainly aren't. And they're talking about a team that needs, I know how far over the cap they are, and they don't have a lot of trade assets, but they feel like they need to find a way, maybe through the buyout market. They got to get somebody in there and get some depth, because I just don't feel that with them right now. And you can say they're saying the core 7, the core 6 is back from last year, but it just hasn't clicked the same way. And I'm losing patience. I'm not off the bandwagon like I am with the Clippers or something, but I'm losing patience.
I am. Well, both them and the Clippers have both Warriors and the Clippers have a negative point differential, and that's not the marking of a champion. With the Clippers, I just don't think you can have guys come in and out of the lineup throughout the season and expect to build any type of continuity or camaraderie and know who you are, right? If their lineup changes on a nightly basis, you can't really know who you are. And with the Warriors, Kurt, you're saying they need to make additions. Maybe they need to stop thinking in terms of right now. And, they've talked about famously the 2 timelines and the simultaneous timelines. Maybe you say, hey, it's really an unprecedented approach to try to both win now and build for the future. And it happened last year. Maybe you say, you know what? We maybe got one more championship than we expected to, or really had a right to earn with this group, with this core group. And now let's start putting ourselves in position for the next run. Maybe it's time to say, hey, it's been a great run, you guys, but it's over. And we're going to start making moves to position ourselves, to start to get under this prohibitive luxury tax penalty that they're paying, right? And start positioning themselves to be a contender for years to come rather than right now.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds good. But how would you do that? I mean, where do you start to make – because that first move is going to be controversial no matter what it is. That first move you make – yeah, like where are you going?
I know where you're going. I was thinking the same thing.
Trade Draymond is the move because he's the guy you got to pay next. He's the guy you got to pay next. And by the way, somebody's going to overpay for him because I don't want to. He's not a system player. He's a good player, but he's got to be used in a specific manner to really get the most out of him. You can't just plug and play him like a lot of guys. And somebody's going to overpay thinking, oh, man, some owner is going to come into their GM. Man, go get him. And they're going to regret it because he's not going to it's going to look like Atlanta where, we'll just go get DeJounte Murray. It'll all be good. No problems. And it's not always that way. But if you're going to move on, that's the move. You move on from Draymond. I still think, though, I'm not quite there yet because I still think in a West where nobody has run away with it. I mean, Denver's good. Memphis is good. But the Warriors could still win this thing, man. I still think the Warriors could get to the finals and make a run. I'm not ready to throw in the towel on this core yet. And that's also not my money, so I'm kind of happy to just throw it away.
Yeah. Well, hold on. Let me just say this. If you threw it out there, trade Draymond. You said not yet, but if you're going to do something like that, you start with Draymond. Would you do that this year?
This summer?
Let's say the 2 weeks. Let's say my 2 weeks are up.
If he comes up.
and they're still playing 500. And they're still playing 500 ball 2 weeks from now.
Would you
do it?
I might canvas around to see what you could get. It feels like a summer move, but they've got to pay him. Remember, he's
also more valuable this year, right? I think his value is higher specifically because there are so many teams that could have a legitimate shot at it and might just be a Draymond away. And he could be the difference between going to the finals, winning a championship, and not make it to the finals, right? I think there's a number of teams you can make a case that if they had a guy like Draymond Green with all the experience and all the things he can do for you, that can make the difference in this wide open season. So I think his value, what you can get in return from, will never be higher than it is right now.
How much could Miami use him at the 4 right about now?
Ooh.
Yeah, there's a problem, but you're right. There's a lot of teams.
I love it. I love this. Just it's a good problem to have in a sense. You're the Warriors because you know look what Boston did last year. Boston got up to a start like this, similar to this, in the first 30, 40 games. Nobody was thinking about them, and then finish strong, make it to the finals and lose to the Warriors. All right, so could the Warriors do the same thing, or you got to go back and forth? All right, can we do this? We know we won it last year. Nobody saw us coming. And we knocked everybody out, or do we get ahead of it and move on and transition to these young guys? I don't know, but I do know this. Scoring in the NBA is not like anything. I said this to Adande off the top. When we were covering the league back in the day, back in the fabulous 1990s, it wasn't like this. I mean, you had a 20-point score. That was special. Yeah, if your top scorer averaged 21 or 22, ooh, pretty good player. Now 21, 22, yeah, man, but you're not averaging 35 like Luka. You got a bunch of guys averaging over 30. You got a bunch of guys 25 and above. Jay, I'll start with you. To what do we attribute this scoring spike?
Well, I think you had your answer if you watched the Miami Heat game last night, in which they went 40 of 40 from the free throw line to set a new NBA record as a team. And Jimmy Butler was 23 of 23, one short of the individual record of makes without a miss in a game. And to me, that reflects the skill level, the abundant skill level that's out there. Again, we wouldn't call Jimmy Butler a top 6 player. We wouldn't call him one of the top shooters in the league. And yet he's able to put on a performance like that from the line, and the Heat collectively were able to be perfect from the free throw line in 40 attempts. And I think it just reflects the abundance of skill that you can find throughout the league.
I think the other thing that goes with that in an era of floor spacing and shooting is it allows a Jimmy Butler, or actually I think Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer said the other day, 55 guys are averaging over 20 points a game. I don't know if that's accurate or if they're on pace for that. That's
there it is.
Gary
there's a tweet right there.
Producer Garrett sent me that out. That's absolutely insane. But I think what happens is if you're outspacing the floor and, hey, I got to have my bigs covering, I can't just have a guy packing the paint, I can't play it in, combined with the three-point shot. Suddenly, though, all these skill players can get in isolation, can get by their guy. The help is slow. Now you're kicking to open guys. Guys are just getting cleaner looks. They're shooting it from efficient spots on the floor. I think the modern game kind of just lends itself to this, right? We're going to pick up the pace. We're going to go fast. We're going to give the ball to our best player and just let him. We're going to pick a matchup and let Luka go.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'd like to land the plane on this, Adande, going back to your point. And you mentioned, and I agree with you, what do you need to be considered a legitimate champion, a reliable champion? Well, got to have a top 6 player or somebody playing like a top 6 player. Point differential has to be up there. You didn't mention defense. I wasn't thinking defense. But when we get to, like, we've been trained to say, oh, yeah, this guy can play on offense, but he's a bad defender, or this team can't defend. Does that matter? Because it seems like nobody really can defend for long stretches when you look at these scoring numbers. Does that matter as much as it used to?
Well, my point differential reflects defense, right? So it's a component of that. So I'm not saying ignore defense completely. And again, we saw the value of Draymond Green, who doesn't give you a lot offensively, but can do just enough, right? But the fact that there are no defensive specialists out there, it seems like, right? Even if you're Draymond Green, you're not asked to, but like, they're more effective. You got to be able to knock down a three-pointer here and there to make it work.
Amen.
You got to take the ball to the basket now and then to make it work. There are no guys out there like, I think back to Kurt. Remember Reggie Evans with the Clippers, who was just tough, aggressive, would get you a bunch of rebounds, but he wasn't even thinking about shooting the basketball.
Yeah,
and I can't think of an equivalent of him in today's game. Can you?
No, and you can't have that guy out there. Last playoffs, the Sixers really needed Matisse Thybulle's defense on the floor at points, and they couldn't keep him out there because he was just getting exploited on the offensive end. Nobody would cover him. Suddenly, everybody else is going 5-on-4, and they couldn't keep him on the floor.
Well, wasn't that the case? So, I mean, didn't that happen to Draymond last year in the finals? I think it was a critical. Was it game
well, then 4? He finally started scoring. I think if you look in the clinching game, he was aggressive offensively, right? And you're right. One of the key stretches for them, they had him on the bench in the fourth quarter because he was an offensive liability.
So, I mean, I guess he's that guy, but we're talking about how it still comes back to him. We're saying he's important, but if the game has changed and it has taken away some of his effectiveness, because like he's not the guy. Draymond's not the guy he was 5 years ago scoring wise. He hadn't scored in double figures in what, 5 years, 4 or 5 years. He was like, he used to be able to give you 13, 14 points a game, really effective. And now what do we have these? What's that stat? It's a Draymond stat now where it's like what is that? Like a double. It's like a double-double. It's a double-double, but he doesn't score. That's what it is. It's like assisted rebounds. But he's giving you 6 points, 12 boards, 12 assists. Okay, I don't know if you could do that. I don't know if you could do that in this NBA and have your team be happy with you. But I tell you who we are happy with. Kurt Helin, always good to see you, man. Thanks for talking some ball with us today.
Always good to see you guys.
You're always welcome here. I love your daughter's background there. Is that your daughter's room?
Back in the daughter's room. Hey, she's out in Santa Barbara trying to deal with college and flooding campuses. So I'm borrowing the room.
Okay. Well, good to see you, man. I hope the remodeling turns out all right at your house. It always goes longer than it's supposed to, doesn't it? Hey, it'll only be a couple months.
Word to that.
It'll be a few months. 6 months later, you're still there.
And it costs more.
Well, Sean McVay, what a life. What a life, JA Adande. 36 years old. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. He won 1. Recently married. Recently, this calendar year. Well, no, not this calendar year, but less than a calendar year. Probably like 10 months
Within
ago.
365 days, yeah.
Yeah. Signed a lucrative contract extension. Courted by the networks. Now I'm going to coach. And then after a 5-win season for the LA Rams, finished 5-12, his first losing season of his career, he said, it's about quality of life. I don't know if I want to continue to do this. And he has allowed his assistants, by the way, this is a telltale sign, he's allowed his assistants to look for other opportunities. That's another way of saying, that's a nice way of saying, I can't guarantee y'all got a job here. Or you may have a job here, I won't be here. I may be the guy who brought you in, but I'm not going to be your advocate because I may be out. How do you look at this Sean McVay situation as we look at it? We just don't know, but it looks like he's about to exit the LA Rams. What do you think?
Yeah, and I don't know why I'm so bothered by it. First of all, reacting to the news, I'm glad that he's allowing his assistants and giving them the heads up that, hey, you might want to find a landing spot. So at least he's not leaving them high and dry, so to speak. If he does decide that, hey, I'm out, or at least I'm out temporarily, they won't be caught totally off guard. There's a good story in The Athletic today talking about, A, what's weighing on his mind, and B, the fact that it's complicated by there are other people's lives, careers, and the situations for their families at stake here. His decision is going to affect so many people. If they do bring in another coach and he wants to bring in his own staff, then people are going to be out. And so I'm appreciative that he's giving him this heads up. And I'm also appreciative of the fact that he could be going through some things. It's funny, my initial goal in this business was I wanted to be able to cover the Lakers and to be working at the Forum and to be courtside at the Laker games. And I got that chance as a 20-year-old when I was interning at the San Bernardino Sun, and they had me fill in and cover the last regular season Laker game. And I went there. It's exciting. I'm sitting on the baseline, and I'm interviewing Magic Johnson in the locker room before the game. And then afterward, I get in the car, and I just felt depressed because what do you do after you get the chance to do what you've always wanted to do? Where do you go from there, right? I had no idea at the time that there would be NBA Finals and Olympics and the Masters and all these great things and opportunities I'd have in my career. But I felt like, okay, I've done what I wanted to do. What next? He got to win the Super Bowl as a coach by age 36. And so I could see where he's saying, okay, where do I go from here? I could see where it's a letdown, right? I mean, he's been chasing this goal and it comes to him at a very young age. Yeah. And I could see where it's a letdown, but I'm also just concerned about the lack of commitment, fulfilling your contract, fulfilling any other sort of, maybe moral obligations that you feel to this franchise, which took a chance on you as a 30-year-old and gave you this great opportunity. Yes. And, he could be ready to step out, before he even turns 40.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's the crazy thing. Now Sean McVay went to a school, the other Miami. Y'all know about the Canes. You know about the U. He went to the other Miami.
Parentheses of Ohio.
Miami of Ohio, right? And it's called the Cradle of Coaching. Cradle of Coaching because a lot of great coaches have been there, including, Paul Brown. Paul Brown spent some time in Miami, a lot of them. And so Cradle of Coaching suggests that, you're a part of a tradition. You're standing on some shoulders. And I think if I'm going to take the personal stuff aside, because if he's going through something, as you said, if he's going through something in his personal life, who am I to sit here and just jump all over that? But just from a professional standpoint, Sean McVay at 36 has never had a losing season until now. So his first losing season. And part of coaching, Jay, is to go through that. You got to go through that mess.
Unless you're Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, and Tomlin's the only one who has done it for a long time and can say, I don't know what you're talking about. But Tomlin has had transitional seasons.
Oh, yeah.
Like this
He's
one.
been through it.
So he didn't know. He didn't know what was going to happen. You lose Ben Roethlisberger. They make the playoffs last year, backdoor, get into the playoffs. Now you lose Ben Roethlisberger. You sign Mitch Trubisky and you draft this kid, Kenny Pickett, and you don't know what it's going to look like. And you wind up finishing at 9-8. Don't make the playoffs, but okay. We went through it. Sean McVay, I think you got to go through it because I'm not going to be pining to get him if I don't even know if he can deal with a rebuilding situation. It's great when 9-7 is your floor. It's great when you can say, F them picks, you and your general manager, F them picks, all right. hey, we're going to go out, we're going to get all these great players, and we're going to win the Super Bowl. Nice. What happens, though, instead of, I said this yesterday, instead of F them picks, it's, oh, no, we're F'd, okay? And that's where they are right now,
right?
Because they don't have, their first-round pick is going to Detroit. Right now, it looks like Detroit has a better quarterbacking situation, and we didn't think that this time last year, but they got Jared Goff. He played well. The Rams, you don't know what they have, and Matthew Stafford with the injury. I think that's part of coaching too. So I would be a little skeptical if Sean McVay goes to TV for a couple of years, even 3 or 4 years, comes back and says, okay, I'm ready for my bag now. Even though I left the bag before, I'm ready to come back and lead some franchise.
But the message that it sends, the signal that it gives out, that when things are difficult, I don't want to be here for the rebuild. I don't want to be here for the challenge. And I think this is where the generation gap kicks in, Mike, is that I think younger people, Gen Z, millennials, they say it's about me first and how I feel and my well-being more so than the outward appearances, right? I'm less concerned about how this is going to come off and what they're going to say about me. And I'm going to prioritize making sure that my wellness is taken care of. And I understand that. And I see that even if I can't necessarily relate to that, because, and it's funny, because I feel like they said that about our generation, Gen X, like, oh, you guys are just, you want to be taken care of,
and they were right.
Here we are now, entertain us, right?
They were right. They were right about us.
But I feel more aligned with the older generations that you got to stick through it. You got to deal with it. And through adversity, you discover things about yourself, right? And you can feel a greater sense of accomplishment when you get through adversity. And having the luxury, we're fortunate. We've been around for over half a century. We can look back at everything and said there were tough times, there were challenges that we faced, and we got through it. And we are probably better off for it, even though it wasn't fun at the time. It was trying, but we went through it. And we can say, and we can take pride in that we went through it.
Yeah, and I wonder, but I don't think owners, NFL owners, pick and choose, right? I don't think they really care. Like if it's somebody else, they might be critical. Sean McVay, 36, won a Super Bowl. It looks like Stan Kroenke, at least publicly, they seem to be cool with it. Like, oh well.
Mike, can you think of a single black coach that could even afford to contemplate stepping away at this age after such a relatively short period of time? Maybe Mike Tomlin has actually built the equity where he could say, you know what, I need a mental break. I've been through it, got through the COVID years, got through this year. I've kept the franchise in a stable place. I need to take a break. I think Mike Tomlin could. Outside of that, I can't think of a single black coach that could afford to even entertain these thoughts. And to me, the privilege, and I would like to see Sean McVay at least recognize the privilege that he can have these conversations and that he has these options available to him. He gets to do whatever he wants, right? If he wants to go sit in a booth for the next couple of years on a set, if he just wants to take some time off, he knows there will be opportunities waiting for him if and when he's ready to come back and coach again. And I'm not sure you can find a single black coach that can say that.
I was just going to say, I'm laughing because, the environment, man. Most black coaches go to work every day. See if the key card still works. It worked yesterday. Is it going to work today? Wait a minute. You drive through security, you try to wave. They're like, hold on. Oh, damn. What happened? Hey. Did they David Culley me? Did they Lovie Smith me? Did they Steve Wilkes me? What's happening here? I was just a coach here yesterday. Oh, sorry.
It was all good yesterday.
Good. No. That was a long time ago. And they don't even call you coach anymore. That's a long time ago,
not
Steve.
For long. Not for long.
Sorry, Lovey. Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget, you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.